All right, so as an introduction to printmaking, um, we are going to be looking at how to produce an image for a block and get it transferred on there, and then how to pull a print. What that means is essentially this is a piece of rubber, um, and you can carve it out and create what's essentially a stamp. Printmaking is all about image duplication, so this I'm going to show you how to transfer the image onto your block, how to carve your block, and then how to make a relief rubbing of the block. So once you print it, this is done with ink. Crayons are a low-tech option that those of you who are doing this virtually will probably want to do. You'll notice that this has to do with image reversal so that it prints right. This is one that I did. You'll notice there is an R here. It didn't show up as clearly as I would have liked, but it's really just goes to show you that if your design isn't symmetrical, or if there is a letter or something that kind of forces it to be oriented left to right or right to left, that will make a difference as far as how you carve it into your block. Now, what we're going to be looking at is how to transfer an image onto a block. So I'm going to take this out of the way, and I have this small block here. This is a piece of linoleum. It doesn't cut as easy as that rubber does, but it still creates a relief or a block print. So what we're going to be doing for our third assignment, which these steps are going to help you through the first and second assignments too. Third assignment is going to be a 2-color block print. So the first thing I've done is I've put my linoleum on my paper, made an outline of it so I know how big my image is going to be. Now, since we're doing a 2-color, I went ahead and did 2 different colors on here. I have my blacks and I have my reds, and I'm going to be carving out anything that is left white. Now, I have taken this image and I put it on the light table. You can use a window, but I've traced over it to trace the areas that are going to be black and the areas that are going to be red, because I'm going to have to transfer both of these over to a block. If you are in person, there is a shortcut for registration, but you're still going to have your template for your second block sort of separate. Now, when it comes to putting your image on your block, if you're going to actually print it, you're going to have to get a mirror image on your block. The way that we go about doing this is, so I'm going to mark on here, this is the original, and we can tell that because this shredder, so I put Foot on there because he's the Foot Clan. I've already traced this on the back. All right, so I had to help a student. I went ahead, I took my 2 designs and I traced them over so that now I have what is a mirror image of the block. Now, this is important for this print because here I have my letters, so if I want those letters to print right, I'm going to have to make sure that they are the mirror image. But for now, I'm just going to be showing you how to transfer your regular image on a block. Now, the way that you go about doing this is I'm going to flip it back over to my originals, and I'm going to take just a regular pencil. This is a shading pencil. They work well. Anything that has graphite is going to work fine. You're going to go over your drawing with the shading pencil. And that's another thing good about kind of making a copy of it after you have your original, because now if this was my original, it would be non-existent. So now I have that transferred over, or not transferred over, I have the graphite done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fold along my lines so that I have sort of a border that I can stretch around my block. So I have the top and the side. All right, sorry about that. Now that I've got these two sides folded, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this nice little pocket that I can put the block in to keep it in place. I'm going to fold, might help if it's on the camera. I'm going to fold this around the block. And now I'm going to go to my mirror image that I have labeled right there. I have my outline. And at this point, you're going to take just a regular ballpoint pen, because it puts down constant pressure. And that's really all you're trying to do is the pressure. Pencil lead, if it breaks, your lines skip. Just a regular ballpoint pen is best. So I'm going to outline my drawing on here. You want to try to outline as much as possible, because then you don't have to guess when you get to where you're actually carving. Try to put, pressure down, because what you're doing is you're using the pressure of the pen to transfer the graphite on the back of your picture to your block. If it tears, that's fine. Don't try to tear it, but it's alright. So straight across, get them eyeballs. Okay, so now that I've got all that outlined, I'm going to kind of double check myself. That's the other nice thing about doing that in pen, is you can kind of tell where you've made your marks. Now it is transferred on that block. Now is when you're going to begin carving out your block. Now, when it comes to carving a block, you're going to be using a Linocut tool. These are gouges. They come in different sizes. If you need to switch the sizes, you unscrew. You may have to kind of jostle it around. There's two metal bezels in there, and you just put the the rounded end between those two bezels, and then you tighten it back up. Since you can change it out and you do have to tighten it, it is a good idea to always make sure to tighten your Lino-Cut tool so that you don't hurt yourself. Now, I'm going to show you some best practices for carving that I've learned the hard way over the years. So, whenever you're carving, you're going to carve out anything that you want to be white. So, if I look at my original image, and at this point I'm only focusing on all these black areas, so since I have this line here, I'm going to be carving sort of around that line. Now, one thing that I have found helpful in the past is if you're going to be printing this in black and you find that it's helpful to go over it in Sharpie, it kind of shows you exactly what it'll look like when it prints. However, if you're not going to use black, you kind of have a really hard time getting the black from the Sharpie off of whatever color you're printing. So, not always a great thing to do. So at this point, I'm going to start carving out everything that I want to be white. Now, when you're carving, what you want to do is you want to break the surface and push forward. This is a gouge. It is sharp, and you want to keep your hands out of the way of it. So I try to keep my wrists pretty straight. If I have a different angle that I need to cut, I turn my block so that I'm keeping my wrists straight. And you just keep carving it. Now, with this being a type of linoleum versus the rubber that we've been using in class so far, it is a little bit tougher to cut. It's just different. This is actually a cork linoleum composite, which makes it also a little bit more difficult to ink up, but that's okay. It just means that it soaks up a little bit of the ink. Try to keep my hand out of the way there. And since I'm going to have stuff in my background on my second block when I get there, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm carving all of my background out too. And this is pleasant, it is satisfying, and that is the beauty of printmaking. Now I'm going to want to keep this line here, so I'm going to cut along that line so that there is still something there that will print. And you can see that now. You can really see that line right there that I wanted to keep. You know, if you keep going like this, you're probably never going to cut yourself because your hand's not getting in the way of the blade. If you hold it like this, you're asking to get some nice little scars on your fingers. But most you know, most of the materials that we're going to be using, they cut really easy, so it's really just about kind of being careful more than anything, because you know, it's not going to take a ton of pressure or anything unless you do that yourself. Now, there are a lot of different techniques that you can do with block printing. I do suggest that you look at block prints online, because, I mean, if you're on Instagram and you look up block prints or printmaking, you'll see, just a ton of cool stuff and a ton of different techniques for different textures, and just a really cool method. You can see here where I have this curve that I'm cutting, I'm kind of turning my block and keeping my hand straight. It doesn't help when your hand falls asleep. So at this point, I'm not just gonna make y'all keep watching me cut this out, but I am gonna show you how to make a relief rubbing of your block once you're done. Alright, so what you're gonna need to make a relief rubbing of your print are some crayons with the paper off of them. Now, what you're going to do, you're going to put your paper on top of it, and you're probably going to want to, you don't have to necessarily tape it or anything, but you want to try to make sure you're going to keep it all in one place. Then with your crayon, you're going to push pressure, but not a ton of pressure, and get a relief rubbing of your print. You want to make sure to pay attention to the sides. You want to try to make sure any details that you know you've carved well, that you get those. It's not going to be quite as vibrant as a regular print because the inking process, see on this one, I started kind of smearing some. So you want to make sure that you get a good one. Here, I'm losing a lot of the details. So probably don't want to use the same paper, but I'm going to, the fewer the passes, the better. The more pressure, the more consistent it's going to be. And then make sure you get the edges good. And this is what you will be submitting for your final project for a block print. Now, your first assignment is to do a letter. Now, the nice thing about letters, and this is what is up on Classroom, is if you look at a rectangle and you think about a letter, pretty much any letter that you do can fill this space. We like to call that composition. So, you want to try to make sure that you're filling as much of that space as possible, and that you're trying to find something else that you can incorporate with your letter, so it's not just a letter. If it's a background, kind of exploring the material, anything that you want, but try to keep it interesting. One thing about printmaking is, you do spend time with your images, so you want to make sure that you're getting to a place with your images that you're happy with. So once you have your first print done, you can turn that in for the letter design. If you are virtual and you are going to do a crayon rubbing, you may choose a symmetrical letter like A, but not something like B, because then if you flip it backwards, you're just going to have a backwards B, which is fine, but that's really going to be up to you. After you do your letter print, you should be doing something of your choice. That is what's due today, which is the 18th when I made this video. And then next week in class, we're going to be spending the bulk of our time on 2-color printing, which here is an example of a 2-color print that I did. And I'll do a separate video to show you how to do your crayon rubbing of a 2-color print.